If you've ever been overwhelmed by clutter or disorganization, chances are you've probably dreamed of having a fresh start. I know I had that dream many nights in my life. And digging into deeper layers of clutter is certainly one way to tackle this, but without setting up effective habits and routines, it's easy for the clutter to slip back in and for that cluttered state and disorganization to be back in your home, even after all the hard work you've put in. So today, let's dig into some decluttering habits that will change your life. Number one, the daily 10-minute declutter session. Yes, this is really as simple as it sounds. And oftentimes people underestimate the value of just 10 minutes. If you can't do it all in one go, break it into 2 5 minutes, one in the morning, one at night, make it work for your lifestyle. So the idea is here, it builds up over time, and the more consistent you can get with it, which of course we want to be consistent with our habits, right? The more it builds and the more progress you're going to make every single time. So I recommend setting a specific time on your calendar, just like you wouldn't cancel a doctor's appointment or maybe even a coffee date with a friend. Put your 10 minutes on the calendar, maybe before or after your morning coffee or tea, or right before bed, and dedicate just 10 minutes to a really small area. Emphasis on the really small. I'm talking like a countertop, a drawer, or a portion of your closet. And by tackling these small areas on a day-to-day basis, you'll prevent clutter from piling up, and in no time, you will notice a noticeable impact. Tip number 2, clutter audits. If you've been following me for a while, you've heard me sing my praises for clutter audits. And if 10 minutes a day feels impossible with your busy schedule right now, I hear you. Then clutter audits are going to change everything. So clutter audits are these micro declutter sessions that often take seconds. And I would say at the very most, maybe 2 minutes. And I think we all have 2 minutes to spare. And just like the previous tip, the more consistent you are with these, the more you boost your momentum and your progress. So here's exactly how you do a clutter audit. What you do is you attach this new habit to a habit you already have within your home. So let's talk about some ways you can easily implement these clutter audits in seconds a day. Next time you're unloading the dishwasher and you're putting all your clean dishes back into the cupboard, before you put them into the cupboard, or as you do, check the back layer of your cupboard. What are some dishes that have been shoved to the back? Maybe some coffee mugs, some water bottles, some sippy cups if you are in that season of life. We all have stuff that gets shoved to the back and ultimately ends up collecting dust. Whether it's chipped, broken, unused, unwanted, or maybe just grown out of, that's an opportunity. You can take a few seconds, do a quick clutter audit, aka sweep of that space. And before you know it, you might have 5, 10, 15 things collected and ready for your donation bin. Which, by the way, I've talked about donation bins in several of my videos. These really dovetail and go hand in hand with clutter audits because you need an immediate, easy, and accessible spot to put the things. Having a visible and accessible donation bin, it could be an old Amazon box, it could be a trash bag. Don't get fancy with it. Shop your house first, use something you have. But just a spot you have dedicated in your home for these clutter audits and the stuff you're ready to get rid of is so important. Let's talk about putting clean clothes away after doing laundry. That's an opportunity when you open up your dresser to put some t-shirts back, to look at the back of your dresser or look up on top of the shelf, look at the items, thumb through them really quickly and go, you know what, that t-shirt I haven't worn in 6 months. These jeans don't even fit anymore. I don't like this trend. This has got to go. Again, each of these tasks and chores we have are an opportunity to let go. And next time you go to grab your cleaning supplies, maybe you store them under your kitchen sink like I do. Again, take a few seconds. Maybe you notice one of the bottles in the back. Maybe you bought it and you don't like the fragrance. So you set it aside. Maybe you ask your mom or someone, a friend of yours, if they'd like it, and you can take it over next time you go over to their house. Or maybe you just condense some bottles, do a little reorganizing, right? You can shift, you can audit the space. Habit number 3, stick to your physical boundaries. And if you're like crickets, you're like scratching your head like, Katie, what are you talking about? What language are you speaking? Then hold the phone, because this is going to be revolutionary. One of the big reasons clutter accumulates to begin with is because we don't consider setting a physical limitation or boundary in place for different categories of things. Think about it. Or maybe put me in your back pocket if you're watching me on the phone right now, and walk around your home and notice the different categories of things that are overflowing and overspilling from the container that they live in. Maybe that's too many books that are overflowing from a bookshelf. Maybe that's toys from a play space. Maybe that's clothes from your dresser or your wardrobe. These are all different containers and limitations that we have, right? Our home, in a nutshell, is one large container for our stuff, and we need to honor these limitations. So I want you today to go through your home, look at these clutter hotspots, and identify what is a reasonable physical boundary that you can set in place to help reduce the clutter. So set a boundary for your books. Is it one bookshelf? Is it two bookshelves? What's your limitation for papers? Maybe you have an entire overflowing filing cabinet right now, and your goal is to condense it to half of one or a smaller one. So any other shopping girlies here watching right now, I used to love shopping, and hear me out. Even though I've simplified my life, I still enjoy shopping. I just do it a lot more intentionally. But regardless, because of my shopping problem that I used to have tons of clothes. I had an overflowing dresser, an overflowing closet, and I didn't honor the boundary of my closet or my dresser. And so that was a great way. First thing I did was decide on a physical boundary. And here's what's neat. These can change over time, right? As we evolve, as we grow, as our interests change, then so should our physical boundaries. If I decide in a year I want to simplify my closet even more, I can shrink my physical boundary. Now, the closet won't change. I can't change the physical space in my home, but maybe I dedicate half of my closet to my clothes and half of it to another category of things, maybe a new hobby or somewhere to store things in my home. You get the idea. A classic example is toys. So my sons are now 6 and 8. Their physical boundary that I established for their toys was a 6-cube cubby and a small corner of our living room because we don't have a play space for when they were really little. That was for things like the bigger trucks and the little handheld things they wanted to scoot on here in the living room or take outside. As they grew up and hit that kind of 6 and 7 and 8-year-old ages, they started to lose interest in those traditional toys that they played with inside. And instead, they got more interested in baseball, football, outdoor sports, and outdoor hobbies. And so my physical limitation for their toys shrunk and reduced over time. And now it's kind of been replaced with board games and little things like that. And my physical limitation for outdoor toys and activities, which I store in the garage, has grown. Again, we base this on our interests. So remember, you can't go wrong. Test something out. Make it realistic. Maybe your long-term goal is to declutter 3 of your bookshelves. To start, you just reduce it by 1. But the idea is once you have that limitation in place, you have to, as Miss Franklin said, RESPECT. You have to respect it. You have to honor that. And when you see that limitation start to overflow or that dresser drawer gets a little too hard to open, that's your cue that you've got to let something go. And you might decide this takes you into a secondary habit of setting your physical limitations, which could be a 1 in, 1 out rule. This is as simple as it sounds. Essentially, every time you bring in any new gadget, piece of clothing, pair of shoes, purse, whatever that is, 1 item is on its way. This way you maintain that physical boundary and that inflow and outflow of your possessions. Let's talk about digital declutter Sundays. These have quickly become one of my favorite days. And as we talked about in this video recently, clutter isn't just physical, it is digital as well. And our digital lives can get really overwhelming. So designate Sunday as your digital declutter day, dedicating 5 to 15 minutes to tackle your email inbox if that's overflowing, or maybe it's heading to your smart device and tackling those photos and files that are accumulating, or maybe it's even hitting up your hard drive and doing some declutter and organization there. Remember that a streamlined digital life can lead to increased productivity and reduced mental clutter. And by the way, I know firsthand it is really tempting to not tackle our digital clutter because physical clutter tends to be more apparent and right in front of us, staring us in the face. But don't underestimate these little routines and habits I'm sharing with you, and doing a little bit once a week even. I just hang out in bed or hang out on the couch and relax, so it doesn't have to be this whole big overwhelming production. It's been super fruitful for my digital life as well. Tip number 5 is the 5-minute reset ritual. You've heard me sing this ritual and habits praises many a times, but have you actually implemented it? All right, so let's spice things up with a habit. This particular habit injects a burst of freshness into your daily routine. Sometimes they take a touch longer than 5 minutes, but starting there is going to be so fruitful for the simplicity and ease and calmness of your home. And this particular habit is less about decluttering and more about reducing the expected mess, which is the mess that happens from everyday life, and keeping it to a minimum so it doesn't get overwhelming. So similar Similar to the 10-minute declutter session we talked about, it's really important to help establish this as a habit to put an alarm in your phone, schedule in your calendar for just 5 minutes, and you can choose a specific time in the day, maybe before or after dinner. I typically do mine after dinner, kind of while winding down for bed. And set a timer for just 5 minutes and dedicate that to resetting your main living spaces. Top spots I like to tackle along with my family are entryway, right? Because that's a big transition spot. Sometimes the reality is we can have the best intention. We can have a spot for everything, a home for everything, but we come home from work or an activity in a rush and everything gets dumped there. Our shoes don't get put where they belong. We're not perfect. So this is what a reset is for. So put the shoes away, put your purses on the hooks, all the stuff in your entryway. That'll probably, for most people, take less than 30 seconds or 60 seconds. Easy peasy. Now we can move on to other main living areas like your living room and your kitchen. And the general idea with these resets are you're going to put back these scattered items and you're going to do a quick sweep and get it back to its baseline tidiness level. This ritual not only maintains the order you've been working so hard for when it comes to decluttering and keeping your home tidy, but it also ensures that you wake up the next morning to a clutter-free, tidy home. And I'm telling you what, that's an amazing tone to set for you and your family for that morning. Managing your clutter doesn't have to be a challenge. You can get more support by joining my one-on-one program called The Inner Circle. And I'll create a custom, personalized 90-day declutter guide specific to you and your lifestyle and your needs. And remember, transformation happens best when you have someone who's walking alongside you to see you through. And also when you have someone coaching you who's been through the fire too. And remember, transformation tends to happen easiest and fastest when you have someone walking alongside you every step of the way. But if you're still feeling overwhelmed by where to start, I want you to click on your video on the screen now. We're going to dig into the weight of clutter and how you can let it go for good.